good to go.
All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. I'm Ray Sanchez, Superintendent of Schools. We'll give everyone a few more minutes to join us and make sure that all the participants are on. But good evening and thank you for being here with us. All right, so we're going to get started. It's about 6:01. First of all, I want to welcome everyone. My name is Ray Sanchez, Superintendent of Schools. And our goal here tonight is to provide you information on the proposed bond that'll be voted on by our community on December 12th. I'm going to provide those that are going to be sharing and presenting along with me the opportunity to introduce themselves. So I'll turn over to Brian and Tina and Paul.
Hi, good evening. I'm Brian Freed. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business here in the Public Schools of the Tarrytowns.
Hi, and I'm Tina Mercedes-Sayas. I'm from Amasi. We're the architecture firm working on the project.
And I'm Paul Tozzi from Harris Contracting, the district's construction manager working on the project.
So we're going to share with you details regarding the proposed bond. I'm going to start off by sharing individuals that have had a significant voice in this process. Prior to arriving in the school district, there were a number of individuals that were carefully studying the needs across the school district, predominantly with a lens on facilities, both from an infrastructure perspective, program perspective, and I just want to thank each and every one of them for the time that they have dedicated. They have volunteered of their time on behalf of the community. So we have a facility committee that's been meeting. And then also in addition to that, I want to recognize those on the facilities advisory committee. These individuals during the summer months, we asked to expand our facility committee itself. But there was just an overwhelming number of individuals that wanted to help and support the facility planning process. And so I want to thank our Facilities Advisory Committee for joining us, for providing perspective and spending basically almost every other week during the summer months, studying our plans, providing feedback and visiting the buildings as well. So thank you to each and every one of the individuals that we noted on the slides. I want to start off with a slide from Simon Sidnick. Much of what you'll hear focuses on what and how what we'll do as it relates to planning if the bond should pass and how we'll go about doing that. But I want to remind all of us that this focuses on our why. These are the children that we have, we're fortunate enough to serve here in the public schools of the Tarrytowns. We have about 2,700 students, and we're thinking very carefully about the various needs that they have and the learning environment that we provide for them. So this is our focus. This is in essence, not only thinking about the students currently in our system, but also the students that will be joining us in future years. So what I'm going to highlight for you are some of the challenges related to each of the buildings. And then we'll turn it over and we'll start looking at how the plan seeks to address them. So starting with Morris School, we've identified many of the classrooms to be very small. In fact, our school has lockers for first and second graders, predominantly as a result of the lack of space within the interior classrooms. From an age appropriateness perspective, it's not a very common practice to have lockers for first and second graders. The overall condition and appearance is uninviting. Also, the offices are disjointed. You have the main office on one side of the hall and then the principal's office on a separate. And also the security is right in the main lobby, and we're hoping to enhance the security options as it relates to Morris School. The nurse's office is very small. It's not uncommon for them to have more than 2 students, and that seems to be an overload as it relates to the nurse's office itself. The 4th floor is very isolated, and also we have music classes, art classes taking place right next to reading support classes and math support classes. So it becomes a disruption for the instruction that we're seeking to provide. The heating and ventilation is antiquated, and we're also seeking to address ADA compliance through this bond project. This is just to highlight some of the lived experiences and what our spaces look like. On the far left-hand side, you'll see a sign entitled Ladies Lounge. We've since taken the sign down, but right next to it, as you enter, is what's called a teacher's workspace. And you'll see sinks in there. That's where what our staff utilizes to make calls to families and various other individuals, perhaps in the community, because of the lack of like specific workspace. They've used now what's called a makeshift bathroom. And next to that, you'll see a student service room. I often refer to it as like a New York City apartment. It's very narrow in scope. You'll only see 3 students around the desk. The space actually dictates the manner in which we provide services. So what that means is that we're unable to provide services for more than 3 students, and these are specifically reading intervention classes. So again, within the context of what you're going to hear is we're going to try to provide adequate space, instructional space for all services we provide in each of our schools. On the far right-hand side, you'll see the music on the stage. It's more than that. That's actually a stage, but it's also a classroom. It's where our flex instruction takes place. So we close the curtain and teaching and learning takes place behind the stage because of the lack of classroom space. Next slide. On the far left, you'll see the lockers that currently exist. Actually, some of the upper level lockers are used by our staff to help you for storage purposes. But I do want to highlight the right-hand side. And you'll see that our gym floods. So does our cafeteria and some of our bathrooms. On significant rainy days, actually, when we just held a session the other day, our head custodian reminded us during the summer there were about 6 times in which the cafeteria gym flooded. So it's not uncommon. I want to thank our staff for all they do, but we're trying to address that also in the context of the bond so that we no longer have the flooding that currently exists. The next is Washington Irving. Immediately, you'll notice that we're at 110% capacity, which means that the space dictates our program. And what also that means is that there are limited spaces for the types of programs we want to offer. For example, music is on a cart. And what that means is that music pushes into classrooms to provide services. More often than not, and more traditionally, music would have its dedicated space. Art could potentially next year find itself doing the same because of the limited space that we have and the need. We see one large cohort that's moving through our system that is coming to WI next year. And STEM education is something that the community supported, but that teacher is now pushing in and providing those services. One item that we want to highlight too is that bold line where it says that 13 out of the 38 are under 550 square feet. If we were to build classrooms, we're talking about 750 square feet or more. And so these are very, very small classrooms, which ultimately impacts the manner in which we can provide services to our students. There's little flexibility for our students to move around. The type of instruction that our teachers can provide is very limited. So once again, we're trying to right-size those classrooms in the context of this project. And very similar to Morris School, trying to address ADA compliance and accessibility and the heating and ventilation systems at the building as well as electric and plumbing. You'll note here, just to highlight some of the pictures, I want to draw your attention to the middle classroom, which is our PT, OT girls locker room. Well, actually, excuse me, it's a girls locker room, but that is where OT and PT services, occupational and physical therapy services are provided. And that is predominantly because of the lack of space for those services. In addition to that, on the bottom left-hand corner, that is one of our typical classrooms. And what you see is basically all the space that those students have to work in, and the teacher does as well. So it's very, very small, and we're limited in what our students can do. So more often than not, those students are limited to sitting at their desk and working from their desk versus moving around the classroom, having an appropriate rug area where they might work in small group instruction. And on the far left-hand corner, you also see a kidney table that's pushed up against the wall, because that is where our teachers sometimes, try to meet with students for small group instruction, but they try to push it to the side when they're not utilizing it. And then you'll note some other pictures on the far left. We're trying to address our library. And also on the right-hand side, what I want to draw your attention is to the gymnasium. The platforms or the seating areas are still original. But also want to highlight that if an individual is on the upper level, there is no accessibility to the actual gym floor. So what we're hoping to do is throughout this project, including Washington Irving, is to make sure that there is a accessibility to all aspects of the building. So our hope is to build a lift on the far left right-hand side where individuals, both students, staff, and community members can utilize if necessary to get to the lower level, which is the gymnasium. And then when we move to the middle school and the high school, to be honest, it's also a space that's also finding itself being very full, meaning that we're starting to utilize spaces that weren't originally considered to be used for classroom. So we have small group instruction, small reading spaces that were otherwise storage areas. This bond prioritizes our elementary schools. We're thankful for the community support when they passed the bond to build the middle school and the high school. But we are limited in space, and you can see what some of those are from special education. And also we're trying to create some dedicated space for STEM education and others. At pre-K, one of the major things that I want to focus on here is that of pre-K, or excuse me, at John Paulding. When we added added pre-K to the building, many of the classrooms that were 900 plus square foot have been cut in half to make sure that we can support bringing in pre-kindergarten, a service and a program that we value deeply. But now we have classrooms that are about 500 to almost 420 square feet. Those are very small classrooms, and arguably when we ask the state, in essence, if we were to build pre-K classrooms, they'd be 900 to almost 1,000 square feet with bathrooms. The other part of it too, you'll see that modulars still exist. Those were put in, and modulars by definition are supposed to be temporary. They are there and they're still there. The intent is to have them finally removed from John Paulding. And then this plan does call for bringing Tappan Hill, which is a school that's currently leased to Southern Westchester BOCES, to bring it back online and make it a kindergarten building. The majority, the building structurally is in good shape. We want to take care of the roof. The windows, basically the envelope of the building, bring in a playground, but more of this is cosmetic, if anything else. Again, roof and others that need to be replaced. I do want to highlight too, I referenced before that there was a lot of conversation prior to my arrival around facilities. And I just want to share that throughout this process, a variety of scenarios were reviewed. So it wasn't that we just came up with this one plan and studied it. We looked at a variety of options that individuals could eventually consider, which considered the fact of programs and at the same time of the overall cost. One of them included looking at Peabody. The cost of building a new building on Peabody we thought was cost prohibitive, plus the issues with the wetlands. So we took that off the table. But what we want to illustrate is that a number of scenarios were studied prior to coming to the plan that we're providing to you and recommending at this point. In a minute, I'm going to turn it over to our architect, but this plan, in summary, focuses on the following. Some of the recommendations include a 4-story, 6 classroom addition to Morris School, interior renovations, infrastructure, building maintenance, and HVAC upgrades. At Washington Irving, a 4-story, 11 classroom addition, interior renovations, infrastructure, building maintenance, and HVAC updates, and also replacing the turf field. Not only just replacing, but also bringing in a different form of infill. Currently, we use crumb rubber. This would be what we refer to as a more greener product, which would be a cooler product, but also what we think is a healthier product for those that use the field. And then a bleacher replacement. If you've been to Washington Irving in the moment, we've had to rope off. In essence, we had to shut down the use of the bleachers. In talking to a structural engineer, they questioned, they told us that there are significant issues with the infrastructure. So in the moment, we've roped off the bleachers. This would entail fixing it and making sure that we replace it with a 600 capacity bleacher. In addition to that, you'll see a building addition to the middle school and the high school, athletic field lights and track resurfacing. At Tappan Hill, infrastructure upgrades, finishing replacement and reoccupying the building, and a playground replacement. And then at John Paulding, it'd be the removal of the modulars and infrastructure improvements as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tina, our architect.
Thank you. So I'm going to just highlight pieces of the project that really address the challenges that Dr. Sanchez spoke about. The first at Morse, the largest issue there is the classroom sizes and the lack of space. So we will be, the proposal includes a 6 classroom addition, and in doing so, it allows us to enlarge some of the existing classrooms. The addition is situated in a location that creates an outdoor courtyard that now will be an enclosed outdoor courtyard for a safe space for children to utilize either for education or for recess. In doing all of this, we will be renovating the entire building, which includes a gut renovation of ceilings, lighting, and flooring, and overall finishes across all of the spaces. We also will be reorganizing some of the space to provide proper administrative space. So a main office that also includes an office for the principal, a larger nurses suite, and some student support spaces that currently are being provided in closet-like spaces. Additionally, the addition includes a connecting corridor, which you can see highlighted in a darker yellow, and that will help improve the circulation up to the 3rd floor, connecting the larger spaces that will hold art, music, and a new STEAM space. So all those spaces are in purple on the 3rd floor. And that overall also improves the circulation in general. Right now, the building is a U, and to circulate from one end to the other, you have to kind of redo the U. This will kind of close the loop on that. We'll also be addressing the entrance, creating a secure entrance vestibule that will be spacious enough to provide a security officer who can be located in a space and not in the lobby. We will be updating many of the systems, including life safety systems, including fire alarm and PA system, and addressing accessibility throughout the building. In addition, the building will have a new heating, ventilation, air cooling system, along with electrical upgrades and service upgrades, really improving the overall efficiency of how the building runs. So this shows you the existing building as it is. You can see on the right-hand side, the site plan shows a little box if that's where the addition will be going. If we move to the next slide, you'll see the building infilled. So that is where the six new classrooms will go and connecting the existing building. This is a typical classroom, whether it's in the new building or the existing building. The classrooms will all be laid out very similar and large enough to support how students learn and how teachers are instructing classes. So allowing students to move around, flexibility for both group learning while other students are working independently. General learning areas, you can see that there's a zone for story time that's really dedicated to instruction as a group, student cubbies that will now be in the classrooms to allow all the students' belongings to stay within the classroom and clean up the corridors as well. This is on the 3rd floor. Some of the renovations include creating a new STEAM lab and a new library space. Currently, the library is in the octagon-shaped space, and there's very few books actually in it. And that's one reason is because the space is very difficult to access. The connecting corridor will really become an integral part of the building to allow STEAM, the new STEAM lab and library to function for all the students. Similar to the classrooms, the space is laid out to create different zones for working, for learning, and for meeting. And this is the secure entrance vestibule plan. So on the top right-hand corner, you see the existing plan, which is, I know it's a bit small, but you'll see the nurse is actually in the space to the top right. And there's an entrance that goes directly into the main lobby, which is where the security officer sits. What we are hoping to do is to increase the size of the vestibule, to move the nurse and create a security office with a proper entrance sequence. And in doing so, creating a secure entrance vestibule. We'll move on to WI. To the left, you see the existing site plan, and to the right, the proposed site. So one of the major items here is that we will be replacing the turf carpet on the main field. We'll be taking out the bleachers and replacing them with a smaller set of bleachers with a berm or a sloped seating hill for either viewing or just play, and then some area designated for storage to support athletics and PE and just general maintenance across the campus. You can see that where the letter A is, that is the existing entrance to WI, and the addition, which is letter C, the sort of rust color building, is where the addition will be. We'll be replacing the playground, which is called out as letter F. And there will be some stormwater management that we will be dealing with, which you can see as well. The main highlight of this project is really creating 11 new classrooms that are all appropriately sized. So these are 800 square foot classrooms. They are across 4 floors, and they really provide the space that allows the remaining portions of the building to open up. In doing this as well, we'll be renovating the existing building, reorganizing its space to allow for proper student support spaces and some of the essentials like art, music, library, and a new STEAM space. You can see those spaces are called out in the light purple. So we're essentially taking the second floor of the building, taking all those general classrooms that are far too small and recreating them, and then enlarging some of those spaces to support the library, the STEAM, and music and art program. We'll also be addressing security upgrades, including new doors, door hardware, security devices, and the fire alarm and public address system. ADA compliance as well. As Dr. Sanchez mentioned, we will be putting in a lift or an elevator at the gym to make the gymnasium accessible, and we will be upgrading the heating, ventilation, and air cooling systems along with the electrical systems. So this is the existing building. You can see on the plan to the right, the arrow is the entrance. The addition is circled to the left. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that the addition is on Franklin Street, is really in line with the existing character of the building. And we kind of open up when we get to the courtyard side. So this will be a direct link to one of the most recent addition of this building. Typical classrooms, similar to Morse, is laid out in a way to allow for flexibility and for change in use. So allowing for group learning in tables that are flexible to create circles, smaller groupings, learning corners for different types of group learning, always a teacher station, and multiple instructional walls. And the library and STEAM portion of this building is again on the second floor. We will be occupying, taking a few different spaces and enlarging them to create larger spaces or renovating them to create larger spaces. So the library will be a little bit bigger. It will contain all of the components of a traditional library, which includes books and areas to do work, but will focus more on student learning spaces and student work areas. This is a view looking back towards the STEAM room. We do see these two spaces contiguous so that they can act either individually or together for multiple classes. So the STEAM room is a bit of different of space. It's much more flexible and is really focused on building, learning, tinkering, and fabricating in some cases. The high school, middle school, we are looking to put an addition in one of the courtyards that is actually attached to one of the main corridors that goes from the high school to the middle school. If the goal of this is to provide the classrooms to free up some of the spaces in the existing building and to just generally provide more space. All right, if you go to the next slide. What we're proposing is a 6,000 square foot addition, which is essentially 3 general classrooms, 1 lab, and some student collaboration workspace and small group instructional space. You can see that this at the conceptual level, how this works. The addition is at 2 levels and supports both the middle school and the high school. We'll also be addressing the field lights and resurfacing the track at this campus. And looking at Tappan and JP, Tappan on the left, we will be doing some renovations to support the classrooms that are required to meet enrollment, along with providing the spaces for some of the special services like reading and speech and space for a psychologist and a social worker and occupational and physical therapy. And at JP, the biggest change will be, as we mentioned, upgrading the infrastructure, but really removing the modulars.
Okay, I'll take it from here. What Dr. Sanchez and Tina laid out is quite a bit of work. So what we do is we start out by trying to look at how do we build this and what's the best alternatives to construct this without interfering with the educational process. So what we've done is we put together a preliminary logistics and sequencing schedule that lays out each individual project so that we can understand how we're going to approach it, so we understand how to build. This schedule in a larger format is also used for cost accounting. We need to figure out where in the process we're going to build so we can factor in the escalation. So this schedule gives us a lot of information that helps us throughout the process. But we decided to move with Morris Elementary first. By we, I mean it was a group decision with the facilities committees and also. And renovating Morris Elementary. Now, Morris is a very difficult building to renovate while you're occupied because it's a pretty crowded building to start with. So what we proposed is moving 1 grade out of Morris and into Tappan. So you're going to be taking Tappan back from BOCES and we turn it into a swing space, let's say. So it allows us to reduce the occupants in Morris so we can renovate that building. So when I'll go a little further ahead, I'll explain that in a little more detail. But Washington Irving would be next, right behind Morris. Those are your 2 real pinch points that we wanted to address first. Washington Irving is a little easier in that the whole construction area is outside of the school. So we could build the entire addition without affecting the existing classes and work on the existing building during the summertime. The middle school and high school are in the program later on after we start getting some of the other buildings, Morris and Washington Irving online. Tappan will be worked on over a series of summers to basically renovate it. A lot of that is cosmetic, windows, roofing, things like that. So that'll happen during the multiple summers. And JP will come online pretty much towards the end of the program as we start moving JP into its permanent use. So next slide. Yep. This is to give you an idea of what I was just talking about on Washington Irving. This is a staging area, and this is to show you that the red fencing around is where we would fence in the staging area so we can build the addition. The idea is to keep everything that we're going to be doing through construction separated from everything, the school operations. So this is a plan that will achieve that. One of the other things that it's always come up is, well, how is this going to affect the kids as we're working in all the buildings while they're occupied? So what are they going to encounter, and how much of this work is going to be done while they're there? So what I did was I laid out the moves here based on that original sequenced schedule that we just looked at. So you can see and get a feel for how the grade movements are going to happen. And the first column, which is in blue, is the 2024-25 school year. And that's prior to anything really occurring. So that was used as the baseline. And here you could see that Morris, first grade is at Morris Elementary in the 24-25 school year, as it is currently. In the 25-26 school year, the first grade became second grade, so that Morris will now house the second grade. And the first grade, like I said before, will move over to Tappan, and I'll show you that in a second. But then in the 26-27 school year, the second grade moves over to Washington Irving for third grade and moves into the normal program of third, fourth, fifth in Washington Irving. So we have in the second grade the largest area of work that is occurring while it's occupied happens during that 25-26 school year. And the way we've set this up is to break Morris down into two parts of the building. There's a 1925 building where the main office is, and 1929 portion of the building, which is on the opposite side. And what we're going to do is separate the building and cut it in half, build walls in it to separate it, almost making it two buildings again. So we work on renovating the 1929 portion while you're occupying in the 1925 version. And then once we complete, we switch over, move the students into the 29 portion of the building, which are new classrooms, newly renovated, good space. And then we take over the 1925 building. Going on to the next grade, 24-25 school year, second grade is at Morris. And then, but like I said before, if you looked at the purple, second grade is going to stay in Morris. And then the second grade that was in Morris moves on to WI in third grade. Moving kindergarten in the year 24-25 school year. Kindergarten is in JP. Then they're going to move into the 25-26 school year when we're under construction as first grade. This is where we've moved the first grade out of Morris and into Tappan to give us that swing space that we need to renovate that building. That first grade is going to stay at Tappan for the second year and become second grade there, so that they only have one. There's not multiple transitions. We tried to keep them together for as much time as possible. And then they'll move into third grade in Washington Irving in the 27-28 school year. And again, back to the program of third, fourth, fifth. On the pre-K, which is currently in JP now, we'll stay in JP during the 25-26 school year. And then they'll go into, on the 26-27, they move into Morris, because now Morris is ready to start occupying the building for its intended use of first and second grade. First grade will start in the 26-27 year, and then they'll move on to the 27-28 year in Morris also. The pre-K, and this is just to start stretching these out so you understand the whole program. The pre-K program in the 25-26 year, when they first come in, will be in JP, and they'll stay in JP for the 26-27 school year, and then move up to Morris for the 27-28 in the normal program. And then one more, the pre-K program starting in 26-27 school year will then move into Tappan Elementary, which is now converted into the permanent kindergarten classroom. So that's when the whole program is completely built out. All buildings can be used for the intended use. And we should be complete with the construction project at that time. Moving on. So, one of the other questions that come up is the workflow, in that, if the bond passes, what happens, and how long does this take? And, basically the vote is 12-12. So if it passes, the design work starts right away, and will take about 12 months to complete the design work. We're mainly focusing on Morris. As the design develops, the design work for Washington Irving will start up. But this is predicated just basically on Morris. The State Education Department is the review agency. So they're so when the documents are complete and ready by the architect, and there's a lot of work that both the architects and us as the construction managers do to get the project ready to go to state ed. And then they need about 6 months for their review period and building permit. Once they've approved the project for bidding, we do a public announcement, and it becomes a public bid. So it is the contractor submit the bids to the district. We vet the contractors, and that'll be somewhere in the winter of 25 to get the lowest qualified bidders. And then we're looking at starting construction in the late spring of 25. We'll start basically getting the site set up, and we're really looking to start on the project during the summer. So as soon as you leave the school, we'll take over, and we'll work on the school through that period. So, construction safety is a concern of everybody's, including us. And that the idea here is that we have to build this project, as I said in the beginning, where we don't affect the educational process, so you can still use the schools. And that this is a highly regulated industry with the state. So we follow all their regulations that they have, and then add some of our own so that we make sure that it goes smoothly. In the schools, we have to time, the school takes precedent over everything. So it takes precedent over the construction process also. So we stop the process, deliveries, interactions, site movements when the school is in operation. By that I meant when they're beginning the day and ending the day. We create separate areas in the school to separate the construction operations from the student operations. So at no time does any of the two mix. The noise has to be maintained to construction operations below 60 decibels, which if you know what that is, it's actually a standard conversation. So how do you do that? well, we have a lot of off-site construction that we look to have done. And we look for a lot of noisy work before hours, after hours, and on non-school days. There's a lot of asbestos in the schools. The asbestos is not performed while the building is occupied. They have isolation of ventilation systems. There is an environmental engineer that is in control of the process to do testing and monitoring to make sure that the process is safe and there are no contaminants leaving the area. So all the areas in the building get tested for asbestos, lead, and the other contaminants that might be there, so that we can really go through and clean the building. So it's a difficult process, but this is what has to be done to basically keep your building occupiable while we're working on it. Next, Brian.
Yep, and I can take it from here, Paul, thanks. So the entirety of this project is about a $93 million project. Let's see, about 2 years ago, our voters gave us permission to save up to $12 million over a 10-year period for a project just like this. And we're going to anticipate that we'll have about $6 million of that saved over the past 2 years for this project. So that means that we're going to go out for bonding, if the voters approve this, for about $87 million. Excitingly for us and for our voters and for our kids and our taxpayers, 53.6% of the cost of this project is projected to be covered by the state in the form of state building aid. So what we ended up doing, keeping that in mind, we modeled about 6 different ways of borrowings, and we looked at borrowings and frankly construction schedules over 6 different possible ways of doing it. We realized that, some of the people said, well, why aren't we front loading it and doing a little bit more work up front? And the reason for that was, if the more work you do, the more quickly you do it, the more you have to pay up front. And that would have resulted in upwards of between 3% and 4% of tax increases just attributable to the capital project. So we opted for a different schedule. We'll talk about that more in a moment. But the other thing that the schedules that we selected did was it saved about $1 million over the course of the borrowings in interest. So we're happy to see that. And it also saved about $90,000 in short-term borrowing costs. We've had questions in the past as we embarked on this project and as we've presented, what happens and what do you do if we end up having to do things piecemeal instead. And, you look at the cost of a roof as an example, it's about $2.4 million. And if we think about what that would look like on an individual budget basis, it's about 3.6% on the levy. So when we have something like that, doing a bond is also a way of spreading costs over time and making it a little bit more palatable for our taxpayers. So here on this slide, if you take a look in 2026, and on the left-hand portion here, this is the percentages that are attributable to the proposed bond of a tax levy increase. So in 2026, we're looking at about 1.4%, 2027, 1.63, 2028, 1.58, and 2029, 1.13. So we wanted to be able to just be transparent about this. So we found out that it's about $821,000 is the average single family home in our school district. So we took that approximate $800,000 to be able to share, well, what would that increase look like on an annual basis? And you can see in respective years 26 through 29, we're looking at about $216 in the first year, $256 in the second year, $254 in the third year, and then about $187 in the final year. And we're not projecting any tax increase attributable to the capital project after 2029. So further on the right-hand side, you see that last chart, we got ourselves to thinking, well, most people, they escrow their taxes, they figure out exactly what their monthly costs are and figure out what their mortgage is, as an example. So we actually went a little bit deeper, and just to show here, we're looking at about $18 a month in 26, in 27 and 28, about $21 a month, and in 2029, about $15 or $16 a month. Now, important to note here that these are indeed cumulative. So if you add all of those up, you're in the, let's say, $80 range. And what that means is you would imagine that in 2029, your monthly payment would be, or tax increase would be about $80 greater than what it would have been 4 years prior in 2025. And this chart is important because it just shows the care that we're taking to be able to multi-year plan and to have instances. You know, we don't know where the planning boards in respective villages may approve additional units for building. We don't know how that will affect our district over time. So what we do is we just prepare for it the best that we can. And what this is a multi-year plan where you can see where the slope of this line decreases, namely between 2032 and 33, and then significantly between 2036 and 2038, where if there was new building and that was necessary because of an influx of kids, we would have opportunities to do that, hopefully at no or little additional cost to the taxpayers. So this is just our version of long-term planning that is really required and just responsible to do. And I'll turn it back over to Dr. Sanchez.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So this concludes our presentation. We're going to take a few minutes to answer questions, but we are titling this project Building a Better Tomorrow as we think about the future of our school district, not only for our students, but also for our staff and for our entire community. As a reminder, the vote is on December 12th. Individuals will be voting either at Washington Irving or Morris School. And with that, I'm just going to pause, and there's a few questions in the Q&A. Some of them may have been addressed over the course of the presentation, but I'll just, seek to just read them aloud. The first is, and it's probably more directed at you, Brian, is what's the interest rate and duration of the loan?
Yeah, so the a loan is generally taken either over 15 or 20 years, depending on if it's an addition or renovations, and we have a mix here. So we'll be looking over about 15 years. And the interest rate assumptions were that in the first issuance, because this is going to be over 3 separate borrowings, the first issuance is $25 million, and we assumed 4.04%. The second issuance is $29 million, and we assumed 4.47 for that one. And the third and final is about 33 million, and that was 4.51%. And we were pretty conservative. We use current rates plus an escalator, and rates are very high now. So we're hoping that the rates would come down. So we really consider this to be what I'd characterize as kind of the worst case scenario in terms of dollar amount.
So one of the other questions includes, and it just came in, have you considered climate change in your planning? I'll take a little bit of that, and then if there's others that want to jump in and add anything to it, I just want to share that we've very carefully considered, and I'll use this more of like going more green and thinking about energy efficiencies throughout our process. To give you a few examples, is the HVAC units, the lighting units as well, and also considering when we think about climate change, and it might be because we're seeing so much rain, the impact in trying to address the water situation that we're dealing with at Morris. So hoping to address that if the rain patterns continue as we proceed and go forward. We're moving away from the units in the windows in terms of air conditioning, which will help in terms of our energy costs as well. So we're very conscious about our environment in developing this plan. Separate, and we'll talk about it later, but I will reference, because we've referenced it at board meetings, the district also is pursuing an energy performance contract. We'll also make some energy saving upgrades across, many of our buildings along the way, in addition to the proposed bond. One of the other questions that was referenced here is, what is the projected student population increase over the next 5 to 10 years from the Edge on Hudson and other development under consideration in Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown? This question comes up very, very often, if not in all our presentations. So I need to share this, and we were remiss in not sharing it earlier, is that all our projections are based on the information that we've received from our demographer. We work with a demographer out of Eastern Suffolk BOCES, and they use, they take into account all the developments that are coming into or coming online. However, they do not project or provide us numbers when projects have not been fully approved by the planning board. So there's a lot of conversations about developments and new items that are coming on board, both in Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown. The demographer will only include them after they've been through the planning board and finally approved, because they go through various iterations associated with that. This does consider providing us some flexibility in our space. Right now, obviously, as you know, just referencing Washington Irving, it's 110% at capacity. This will provide us some flexibility for growth. But obviously, we're going to have to keep an eye on what the continued patterns will be coming out of the Edge in particular. Historically, I've heard that, one thought that many or very few students were coming out, that we are here saying that there have been students at this point coming from those developments. And then the last one is, what is the breakdown of funding between bonds, grants, and taxes from residents? And I think, Brian, you referenced that in your presentation, but maybe you can just repeat it for the audience as well.
Yeah, sure. So we are anticipating that we're getting 53.6% of our total project costs covered by state aid. And that we'll have about $6 million in savings by that time. And the rest would be taxpayer impact. So the only other thing that I will reference is that there's an awful lot now available from New York State, and we're working very, very closely with NYSERDA. And this kind of gets to both questions, both about grants and about environmental concerns. We're working with NYSERDA. There's many $1 million out there, some of it competitive, that we'll go after to help look at energy efficient systems. So we'll be working hard at that. And that's the only other piece that I would add that we didn't mention earlier.
So that concludes all the questions from those that are watching. But I do want to share this. So first of all, I want to thank our construction manager and our architects and assistant superintendent for being here and presenting. But I also want to take a moment to thank those that have taken the time to learn more about the bond project and what is being proposed on December 12th. If there are any additional questions that individuals may have, maybe post the presentation, you may feel free to email myself or Brian. We're happy to seek the answers that you might have, or to questions that you might have. In addition to that, I'd encourage you to visit our website. There are a number of updated items from a Q&A and various other key information that you might find valuable. We've taken a lot of time and gotten a lot of feedback in developing that website. And lastly, we're going to host and post this presentation on our website as well. So if one wanted to review or share with others, please feel free to do so. Before we go, there is one additional question. It's related to the 53%. So is the 86 million of the total cost for the bond, or after 53% covered by the state?
Yeah, so where we are with that is, if you think about it as an expenditure and a revenue, right? So we have to borrow the entirety of what it's going to cost. So that's where the $86 million comes in. And what happens is we will pay that off over the 15 years following issuance, right? But we get the state aid also on the revenue side. Over 15 years, 15 for the renovation and 20 for the additions, right? So the money that we get in from the state goes directly to the cost of paying off that 86 million, and the rest of it is for the taxpayers. So Joseph, I think your question is it in addition to? And the answer is no. The 86 is the entirety of what we borrow. And the taxpayer portion is what we do not get from the state over that same 15 to 20-year period.
Okay, it seems like I think we answered all the questions for the participants, but once again, encourage you to visit our website. Thank you again for joining our presentation here this evening. And at this point, we'll conclude the presentation, and we wish everyone a wonderful evening. Thank you.